All right, today we are jumping right into a really intense and frankly startling set of psychic predictions for our world, kicking off in 2025. We've taken a whole lot of information from this one source and broken it down to make sense of what they see coming. And you'll see the main message is one of massive, massive turmoil, but it's all leading somewhere you might not expect. Okay, let's get into it. So you have to wonder, right? What does the future actually hold, at least according to this one particular vision? We're about to walk through a forecast that literally spans the entire globe. It touches on everything from our political leaders and society, all the way down to the very planet we're standing on. You know, what the source describes is a path that's filled with some pretty dramatic and sometimes alarming events. It's really a vision of massive upheaval, of entire systems getting shaken to their core. So let's start with the overall vibe of these predictions. And this quote, this really sets the tone for everything we're about to get into. This is not some gentle, easy forecast. It's basically a warning to buckle up. The source is hammering home this idea of a very intense energy that we're already in, and it's only going to ramp up from here. The big idea is that we're at the end of major cycles, and well, that usually means a whole lot of chaos before anything new can be built. So, with that in mind, let's look at the first area of predicted chaos: politics and society. Okay, so the very first theme that just jumps out from the source material is this idea of political firestorms and, huge social unrest. And we're not talking about a few isolated incidents here and there. This is a prediction for a global wave, a wave of just pure frustration and anger spilling out onto the streets. The source seems to believe that people all over the world are finally hitting their breaking point. They're waking up to what the source calls corrupted systems, and they're just not going to stay quiet about it anymore. And the source gets super specific, pointing to a huge surge in protests in these exact spots around the world. So, in the UK, Ireland, and France, it's all apparently tied to immigration policies. Over in Angola, it's linked to this massive fuel price hike that's already caused riots, but the source sees that as just the start, predicting things will get way more violent. It even sees unrest coming for Russia, though it also says that'll probably get shut down fast. And for the US, a big wave is on the horizon for 2026. And the reason for all of it? Well, according to this psychic, it's a collective I've had enough moment about inflation, about governments, you name it. And this unrest isn't just on the streets. It's predicted to go all the way to the top. The source sees huge shakeups for some major world leaders. For South Africa, the vision is of a successful attempt on its leader. For Israel, the prediction is that Prime Minister Netanyahu's time is going to expire by 2026. Then there's this really dramatic vision for Saudi Arabia, the crown prince passing away suddenly, unexpectedly, and the source specifically uses the word poisoning. And in the US, the turmoil just keeps coming. A Supreme Court justice is predicted to fall, and there's a vision of Donald Trump, if he's in office, going on a firing spree that kicks off a wave of mass resignations. The visions for the US government get even crazier, and they zoom right in on Washington, D.C. The psychic says they sense something really big is coming. Maybe an attack or some other major crisis. The visions are fire and smoke right at the heart of American power, and the source is left trying to figure out, are these images literal, or is this just a metaphor for all the political chaos? So while the psychic first thought, hey, maybe DC on fire is just symbolic, the source then makes this really startling claim. They say the spirit said the White House is literal. The vision is described as something much, much bigger than anything we've seen before, with a feeling of panic and real urgency. The source even adds that this vision could also apply to the Capitol building, seeing its dome in flames. The timing's a little fuzzy, maybe late 2025, but the key thing here is how insistent the psychic is that this vision is meant to be taken literally. All right, so moving on from the world of politics and people, the source lays out a bunch of really dramatic visions about the planet itself. This next part is all about predictions of these massive natural disasters, and in some cases, maybe not so natural disasters. The theme here is huge earth-shattering events that are going to impact millions of us and literally reshape our world. It really paints a picture of a planet that is under extreme stress. Just look at that number, a 9.0 or higher. That is absolutely staggering. The source is predicting a monster earthquake of that size, saying it'll happen certainly by the end of 2025. The psychic feels like all the recent 4.5 plus quakes we've been seeing around the world are just the buildup. And that's not all. Other huge quakes are also in the vision, one in Turkey that's strong enough to shake Egypt, and get this, a surprise 8.0 or higher along the Mississippi River near Memphis, Tennessee, an area that you just don't think of for that kind of seismic activity. Now, the source zooms in on this really specific window of time in August of 2025 and flags it as a period of very intense energy. These dates here, August 7th to the 14th, but especially the 8th, 9th, and 11th, are marked as being super critical for major world events, and yeah, that includes one of these massive earthquakes. This is supposedly a time when all the energies hitting the planet will be at their peak, so it's a period to watch very, very carefully. One of the most detailed and, frankly, terrifying visions from the source is all about New York City. The psychic describes what they call an apocalyptic storm of a scale we've never seen, just slamming the city and the New Jersey coast. And this isn't just a really bad storm. No, this is envisioned as a cataclysmic event, something that brings the city to its knees, part of a feeling the source describes as Babylon falling. And the vision gets unbelievably specific about how this storm would cripple the city's infrastructure. The source says they see the subway system just completely flooded, so much so that they need these huge pumping operations just to get the water out. Tunnels, like the Holland Tunnel, are seen totally filled with water, completely impassable, trapping people who were trying to get out. In fact, the psychic passes on a warning they got from Spirit. If you're not out before it hits, just bunker down. Don't even try to leave because the escape routes will be gone. And here it is. This is the big, symbolic, and maybe literal, peak of the vision for New York. The source sees the Statue of Liberty just swaying violently in the storm. It gets struck by lightning, and then its arm, the torch arm, snaps off and falls into the water below. What's really strange is that the source says it looked like the statue was kind of poking out of the water, like the whole island was submerged. Now, they do admit this could be a metaphor, right? Symbolizing a blackout for the city or just rough seas ahead. But wow, what a powerful image. A loss of light for this modern-day Babylon. So, shifting from water to fire, the source gives another really grim warning. It sees another huge wildfire coming somewhere along a coastline, and they explicitly compare it to that horrific fire in Lahaina, Hawaii. But here's the key thing. According to this source, this fire won't be natural. It's described as feeling very, very intentional, like it's part of some bigger, orchestrated plan. Yeah, so the source gets very specific about how this fire is supposedly going to be started. They connect it to a vision they had during the Lahaina fire and make this extraordinary claim, saying, "Spirit showed me lasers coming down from the sky from a satellite or a drone." I mean, that suggests there's some kind of hidden, high-tech weapon being used to create these disasters. The source even says they saw these same kinds of beams starting fires in Texas cattle country, framing it all as a direct attack on our food supply. So according to the source, there are specific clues to look for that would identify this fire as being deliberate. It'll supposedly start during really strange high winds. It will feel very, very intentional. It'll have these weird similarities to the Lahaina fire, like boats catching fire way out on the water, or how some objects painted a specific shade of blue strangely survived. The core prediction here is that this will be on purpose, and the source even hopes that maybe someone will catch proof of these beams of light they're talking about. The next brand of chaos in these predictions moves away from the natural world and into the technology we all rely on. The source sees major disruptions coming for our power grids and our financial systems. Basically, a loss of security in the very things we use every single day, with problems that are described as being both accidental and, well, very intentional. The source has this specific vision of three and all. 3 huge blackouts hitting 3 major world cities. First up is New York City, which ties right back to that apocalyptic storm vision. The blackout will be blamed on the weather, but the source implies there might be more to it. The second is Paris, France, and the vision says it'll happen in an area that's gone dark before. And the third city is Moscow, Russia, with a prediction that parts of that city will also go dark. We're not talking about small outages here. These are described as entire cities, or at least huge chunks of them, going completely black, possibly between now and early 2026, with November of 2025 being a particularly risky month. The psychic also warns about a really direct threat to our money. The vision is of these major cyber attacks that target banking apps and crypto platforms, where people's money just vanishes. It's suddenly gone from their accounts. The source points to things like the whole Sam Bankman-Fried situation as a preview of this kind of chaos, and because of this, they suggest that physical stuff, gold, silver, real estate, is probably a much safer bet than anything purely digital. Okay, so after laying out this incredibly intense, and let's be honest, pretty scary list of predictions, the source completely pivots. And this is the big twist. All of that chaos, all the destruction and turmoil we just talked about, is framed as not being the end. Instead, it's presented as a necessary, painful first step towards a really positive transformation for all of humanity. This is the central argument of the whole vision. So this slide really gets to the heart of it. The whole thing is tied together by this one concept: collective healing. The idea is that humanity can't get to some new level of peace and higher awareness without first facing and, well, purging all the darkness. The earthquakes, the protests, the systems collapsing, all of it, in this view, is meant to expose corruption and force people to awaken. The source says it's a really rough road we have to go down, but it's ultimately part of a much bigger process of change for us and for Mother Earth. These events are seen as necessary to pull back the curtain on deceptions and push us all into a higher vibration. And this really captures the two sides of the coin in the source's message. On one side, you've got all the chaos, the earth shifts, the global protests, the systems breaking down. But for every one of those negative things, there's a promised positive outcome. So the earth shifts, they lead to collective healing. The global protests, they help the truth awaken. The collapse of the old systems, that's what makes a period of peace possible. In this vision, destruction is literally the only path to renewal. The source even gives us a timeline for this whole process. It identifies this window of great change from 2025 all the way to 2032. And inside that window, some years are flagged as being extra important. 2029 is highlighted because it has a numerological vibration similar to 2020. And both 2029 and 2030 are pointed to as a time of high concern for another pandemic-style outbreak. But the overall idea is that by 2032, this whole intense transformation will be over, leading us into that promised new era of peace. And so we land on this final, really provocative question. The entire vision we've just walked through is built on this paradox, that the only way to get to a better world is to go through a period of intense suffering and breakdown. The source material presents this as a flat-out necessity. It kind of forces you to ask, what does that mean for our future? How do you even begin to navigate a world where the very events that cause so much fear are actually being framed as the necessary steps toward healing? It's a profound, challenging idea to sit with, and it's really the core takeaway from this incredibly complex vision of the years ahead. Thanks for joining this Explain.